I'm Alex Hsu. I'm a furniture designer and artist, and I would describe my style as thoughtful, playful, and craft-focused.
My name is Lauren Verdugo. I'm an artist and furniture maker. I would describe my style as sculptural, functional, and sustainable.
What did you think when you found out you'd be transforming a folding lawn chair?
It's already a perfectly comfortable chair, so I want the function to still be there. It's called a folding chair, so let's hope it still folds.
It was gonna be tough to hack a chair in 8 hours. Chairs are notoriously difficult because they take ergonomics into account, and even more difficult if they have mechanisms that move.
Just to qualify it, fine woodworking doesn't happen in one day, normally, so this is gonna be a challenge.
Time is of the essence, so I'm ready to get started. Let's get to it. My design process is quite meticulous. I like to have everything sort of figured out before I even start to dig into my material.
I like to make all my mistakes on paper first, because the second you start cutting up some wood, the second your mistakes become way bigger or way more expensive.
Seeing as the chair is quite cold and industrial, I was hoping to introduce wood and cork, which could potentially interfere with the folding mechanism.
When you're working with wood, you're typically not working with a blank canvas. The grain is going to have some sort of swirling, it's going to have some cathedraling in it. A lot of those beautiful elements you'll want to bring out in the chair, so that definitely dictates the design.
So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take the existing frame, I'm going to remove all the webbing, and I'm going to see what we're working with.
For the frame, I'm going to make sure that I clean it off, get the aluminum all nice and shiny.
Aluminum is a pretty slick material and paint doesn't adhere to it so well, so scuff sanding it beforehand gives it a little more grip for the paint to adhere to.
And then once I do that, I am able to prime it.
From there, I'm gonna source some lumber at the lumber yard.
Typically, I'll go to Street Tree Revival in Anaheim. They deal with what's called urban lumber. So they're saving trees that are close to a water line, they're already dead, they might fall on something, they're a fire hazard, anything like that, and they'll take them, and instead of putting them in the chipper, they will put them into kilns and turn them into raw lumber.
So we made it to the lumber yard, and we are gonna pick through this pile to see if we can find any winners. And these two are what I pulled. Beautiful straight grain. I think these are gonna do just great.
This grain on this wood is gonna be kind of hypnotic, having a lot of chatoyance, which chatoyance is just that ripple, kind of looks like it's flowing through the wood. Holy chatoyance. That's what I said when I saw the wood. I was like, holy chatoyance. So the next steps would be to true up all four sides and make them all square.
When you get wood from a lumber yard, it usually comes partially milled, so it's quite rough to the touch, and it needs to be machined in order to have that nice smooth surface.
This is the jointer, and this is gonna make this nice and flat. Basically, you're making reference surfaces, so everything's repeatable and accurate. Being square in woodworking is actually a good thing. If you end up having a slight angle, you'll have a gap in one of your joints, and that will definitely show that you weren't paying attention right from the beginning. It used to be like that. Now it's flat.
Then I'll head over to the planer, and the planer uses the flat surface that we created on the joiner as a reference surface to then create a smooth surface on the top of the wood. So basically this is the process that you start pretty much every project with, starting with rough and getting to smooth plain lumber.
The arms of the original chair are a little funky, definitely will not match the wood the way I want it to. The chair arms are actually riveted on, so I can't technically take them off, and I realized that trying to replicate those parts would take most of the day. So we're just gonna add a piece of wood on top and mount it that way. I took this template and made it out of my drawing, so I'm gonna put this on here, trace it, and cut it out. Okay, so now that we have two identical arms, I'll go ahead and make those arms into what will be the new armrest. That's pretty far along. So this is starting to look good. As soon as you put your arms on there, it'll have a nice place for your arms to travel down. I'm gonna flip this over. I end up using rasps and files, that way I'm shaving off pieces of material and it's turning into more of a sculptural bow. It helps keep the flow. I'm being very careful here because I can't take off too much or else it will not match the other arm. If I mess up, then I'm gonna have to make the mistake on both arms.
For this project, I really wanted to introduce a pop of color, and I thought the best way to do that would be introducing some laminate. So this is my humble collection of laminate samples. Most people use it for testing a color swatch for, let's say, like a kitchen table or something. But I thought it'd be a good idea to repurpose these and incorporate them in the slat for the final chair. It's kind of a game of swapping them in and out and figuring out which looks the best. Put a little too much pressure on the end and cracked it. So if you do use laminate, beware, it can be a little brittle. I'm gonna trim off the edge here, and I'm actually gonna cut it to the final slat size.
So this is the seat that I have here. I'm gonna cut a really nice little half circle into this part here. That way it'll look really nice on that rounded frame.
I'm gonna take the board over to the router table to create a groove in the bottom of the slats so that they eventually nest nicer onto the tubing of the frame. I'm gonna go up about 1/4 of an inch. Yeah. All right. All right, that looks pretty good.
Look at that, looks great, good cut. I want this chair to be custom, so it's gonna definitely need to be carved. It's supposed to be comfortable. So I'm gonna go ahead and scoop the butt pattern that I'm gonna put on the seat out.
After I've created that groove on the underside of the planks, I'm gonna take it over to the table saw to cut the wood into individual slats. So the table saw makes my life a lot easier because it allows for me to make repeatable cuts of equal thickness. I want to add cork to the top of each slat, so I'm going to take the slats back over to the router table and route out a groove for them to sit in. The router table is a super powerful tool, and it comes with a lot of bits that you can use that can allow you to achieve certain profiles. So in this case, I'm using a straight router bit to cut this groove that the cork will fit in. Cork is an amazing material. It's made from the bark of a cork tree, and it's infinitely renewable. Harvesting it doesn't harm the tree at all. So it's still a little rough, but we're gonna sneak up on its final thickness on the belt sander.
So the next step would be sanding. And more sanding. And more sanding after that. So I'm looking to remove any lines that aren't obviously the grain. So I'm looking for saw marks or scratches in the wood that are a little bit deeper than the surface. I'm gonna take this off and put on the 180 grit sandpaper. I'll go from a lower grit, which is more coarse, like 80, and then I'll work my way up to the higher grits, which I will end up ending at 180. I feel like every woodworker at the very beginning says that sanding's therapeutic, which it is, but it's always hard when you're on a deadline.
Now that this is cut to size, we're gonna take this piece of cork to the router table so we can get it to fit inside this groove. So in this case, I'm using a roundover bit to create a speed bump-like profile for each slat. Then I'm gonna take it over to the table saw to cut off the little strips that I need. We got little cork speed bumps. Back to the router table. It's really just about repeating that process back and forth, hopping from the table saw to the router table. Let's see, they kind of just pop on in. Cool, there we have it. The glove fits now.
So the best part of any project is finishing, but more importantly, seeing that gorgeous wood totally pop every time you put that oil on. It just starts singing. Oh my gosh. Woo, that's a treat and a half. Wow, look at the comparison there. That's insane. So the last step, the one that we've all been waiting for, is assembly. We got these oiled pieces and the finished frame, so let's see it all together.
So once the slats are all done, now it's off to final assembly. Hello.
Hey, Alex.
Hey, Lauren.
I'm so stoked to see what you made.
Oh,
All
wow.
right. See, I knew you were up to something. That is so awesome.
Wow, and your piece, the way that you sort of accentuated the figuring of the wood and augmenting the armrests, that was a challenge that I kind of wanted to stay away from, but I'm glad you did something to them. What type of tree is that?
This was a street tree.
Oh, great.
It's Indian rosewood, so it's at least like weatherproof. It's like teak.
I love that side view too of the little notch that you made for that axle and then seeing kind of that rough edge of the wood itself. That's a really nice detail.
I like how you kept with that green. I really liked that green, except you made it a much better green, I think. So the fasteners on the back, the little blue guys, what are those? I love those.
I think they're called saddle washers. It's a little bit nicer attachment method.
Yeah.
Kind of reminds me like vertebrae or spinal aesthetic.
Man, that cork came out really nice.
Thanks.
I didn't know you could do that with cork. That's really cool. Like, didn't crumble and stuff.
Pretty amazing. Yeah, the binding agent is strong enough. You basically can work it just like wood, except it doesn't, really expand or contract, and environmentally friendly.
Is it comfy?
It's relatively comfy. You might look like you've been grilled if you take this chair to the beach, like a couple ribs on your back.
But really softly, like a very soft grill.
Sure. Yeah. Trying to make a chair in general is incredibly challenging. And then trying to make a comfortable chair is even harder.
Yeah.
So I was leaving the ergonomics kind of up to the original designer.
Does yours fold by chance?
Mine does fold most of the way. I would say like 90% of the way.
I was like not expecting it to fold right. And then I was like, click. And I'm like, oh, check it out and fold. So that was a nice thing. Yeah. I would be happy to walk home with like either one of these chairs. I wouldn't be mad.
Absolutely. Yeah. Big hat tip to you.
Thank you. One hat to another.
Lauren, it was lovely to meet you and see your chair. You've done an amazing job. I would love to link up since we're both in LA, check out each other's shops and swap a lot of stories.
Yeah, I'm down. Might even have to make some sawdust. Who knows?
Looking forward to it.